starting to warm up. Well, at least for us. I know a lot of you poor suckers are stuck in ice. Dude, I'm trying to make everybody feel good. If I was here in my flip-flops and shorts, and everybody would hate my guts. So let's save the hatred for later in the video when I say something wrong. Does that sound good, Jeff?
I like this.
Yeah. So, anyways, what I was saying is we're getting to pre-spawn spawn, okay? And as the fish start to transition out of deep water to shallow water, out come our flipping sticks, out come, you know, our creature baits and our different things that we're flipping. Well, not all of us get to live places where we flip 365 days a year. So a lot of us are going to have some rust and we're going to make some mistakes. So today we are going to highlight the 5 most common mistakes that we see people make flipping, either on guide trips or, you know, mistakes that we're correcting here in the shop, so that hopefully we can prevent you guys from making the same mistakes and we can all catch more fish this spring. So, you ready, Jeff?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go do it. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of OSP, Evergreen, Depths, Lucky Craft, Jackal, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard to find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com. All right, welcome back, my friends. I am Ben with Hookup Tackle. I don't even know where I'm from. I just stumbled on my own company. Welcome back, my friends. I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, aka the Tackle Otaku, being filmed by my buddy Jeffrey the King. We are the Hookup Tackle USA. All right, today we are going to break down the 5 most common mistakes that we see people make when flipping and pitching. Now, there's a ton of shit that can go wrong when you flip and pitch. You're close range, you know, heavy line, cover, big fish, right? So we're probably going to leave something out that's, you know, you guys think is maybe more important, and that's great. We would love for you to include down in the comment section some ideas of what you think people do wrong as well, because the idea is collectively as a community here, we want to strengthen everybody up to try to prevent as few mistakes as possible. Now, as I said in my opening, I live in Arizona, right? And I don't get a chance to flip all the time. Most of our fish move to deep water and we're deep structure fishing, and then all of a sudden they move up in the spring and then we're like, all right, let's go flip them. And it's been several months since we've flipped. So, you know, I don't get a flip every day, but Griff, do you flip pretty much every day?
Yes.
And there you have it, right? So I learn a lot from this guy, you know, and I learn a lot collectively from all the info, you know, here in the store. We get tons of mistakes come through. So we're just gonna highlight some of the mistakes that we see, and hopefully it will help you guys catch more fish this spring and prevent some of those mistakes. So let's dive in. First mistake we see people make flipping is the wrong bait selection. Now, when you think of flipping, pitching, right? Generally, the first thing that comes to mind is some kind of beaver bait. Okay, this is a Reaction Aid Innovation Sweet Beaver, arguably, or at least in my mind, probably the best all-around flipping bait. I guess if I had one bait to flip, it would be this bait. Now, creature baits are generally, you know, kind of squared off, and they've got some kind of, you know, appendages to them. And these baits just glide through cover very easily. They just kind of fall through. They're just very easy baits to use and super effective. Fish love them. But not every fish sitting in every bush wants the same bait. And so what we see a lot of times is we see guys just say, okay, they're shallow, and they grab these and nothing else. Or they flip a beaver through a bunch of bushes and we didn't get bit, so they move on. Well, bait selection is super, super critical when it comes to flipping. So I love to catch them on a beaver, but they don't always eat the thing. So it's really important to keep a variety of baits on hand. Typically, what we find is early in the season when the fish first move up, the best thing to flip is some kind of soft stick bait. So this would be something like a Yamamoto Senko, a DoLive stick from OSP, something that you can fish, weighted or unweighted, that you can flip next to a bush, and this thing is just going to very slowly, kind of horizontally flutter down, okay? As the fish get a little more aggressive and the water warms up a little bit, then that's usually the time that we switch over to a beaver presentation. For me, it's usually the OSP DoLive Beaver or the Reaction Innovation Sweet Beaver, something like this, some kind of creature bait that can come through cover easily. We can put a good size weight, a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce weight, and we can get that bait to kind of get down through the bushes, the trees, whatever it is that we're flipping. As the spring progresses, as they get to a post-spawn mode, that's when we find that something with some action really triggers them. So as you start to see, fry around the bushes and that kind of stuff, we love to switch to things that have some movement. Something like a Yamamoto Cowboy, a man bear pig, a brush hog, right? And what I mean by movement is I want something that's got, some of these like grub style legs. Something that as it's falling, it's going to have some life to it now versus just like a slow flutter down. So if you're fishing around, you're not getting bit on your traditional creature, mix it up a little bit. Throw something a little bit different, something with a little more life or a little bit slower flutter, and hopefully you'll get more bites. Griff, did I miss any baits?
You missed it. The Rage-tail structure bug is an amazing flipping bait.
Thank you, Griff. And when do you use this instead of a non kind of claw type bait?
I'm going to use that when I feel like they need a less aggressive presentation. I'll always start with a crawl, and then if they're not biting it, I'll switch over to that.
Cool. Arigato, sir. There you go. One more for the list, Jeff. All right. Next mistake we see people make is in hook selection. Now, hooks are kind of like line to me. This can be a very personal thing, right? And if you have a hook that's working for you, then by all means, stay with it. I don't care what hook you use, right? But we see a lot of guys just use a standard offset shank worm hook and they flip it in the bushes and they're just not getting good hook penetration. So I'm going to highlight a couple of the key hooks that we use and when to use which one. Now, when I think of flipping, I generally think of a straight shank flipping hook. Now, pretty much every brand makes a hook like this. This is the Owner Jungle flipping hook. This is my go-to. Gamakatsu makes one, Decoy makes one. Everybody kind of makes one, right? Now, the advantage of going with a straight shank hook is you are going to get the biggest amount of bite out of the hook. So since you're close range, right, there's nothing in the way of this hook point. So when the bait is sitting on there and you swing, all of this entire thing is bite for it to hit the fish. So you're going to get the best penetration through your soft plastic. You're going to get the best penetration into the fish so that you can pull those fish out of cover. I like the Owners. They're made out of like a ZoWire material, so they're really nice and slick. And they have this little kind of fiber, fluorocarbon fiber weed guard on there, or not weed guard, but bait keeper. So it kind of flexes with the bait. So I get a lot of life out of my bait. So if I'm at a starting point, right, this is generally the hook I go to. If I'm fishing grass, if I'm fishing toolies, if I'm fishing anything aquatic vegetation-wise, this is the hook I go to. Now, this is not the only hook that I use for flipping, and this is where I see a lot of people go wrong, is they think, oh, well, I've got this, I'll just flip this in every type of cover possibly known to man. And this is where I see a lot of mistakes. Now, out here in Arizona, we flip a lot of wood, a lot of mesquite trees, a lot of Palo Verde trees, yeah, big cottonwoods, right? It's majority wood-based. We do have some aquatic vegetation, some grass, some toolies, that kind of stuff, but most of our lakes don't grow grass. They just have big wood. The challenge to using a hook like this is if this has a beaver on it and a weight and it's down there, 7-8 foot to the base of a tree and a fish eats, because this is such a huge gap, a lot of times when you swing on the fish, the hook goes through the fish's face basically and will snag into the wood. So you'll flip in the bush and all of a sudden you'll feel it pull down and you swing and it's just stuck, right? Does that ever happen to you guys? You get bit and you're like, oh, there's one, and you swing and it's just stuck. You're like, oh man, I'm snagged in the tree. Well, what's happened most of the time is the fish ate it, you swung, the hook penetrated all the way through the fish's face and it started pulling them and it wedged into the wood. So they're on there, but they're also wedged on the tree and there's just no way to really get them out, right? So if I'm fishing wood, I switch over to an EWG style hook, okay? Now the advantage of the EWG style hook is that it shortens the gap. So it's a little bit less wide of a gap. So it will hook them, but it won't hook them so far that it'll come all the way out of their mouth. It just kind of hooks them good, gets through the barb, and then I can move them out of cover. So ideally I would like the straight shank because it's gonna give me the most bite for my hook set. But if I'm fishing around a lot of wood, I usually go to an EWG style like this. Now you have to be careful with EWG style hooks. You can't use a hook like the Gamakatsu EWG. Here comes the hate. Here we go again. Because the hook point and the hook eye are in the same plane. So you have to go with a good EWG hook. This is the Zappu Bellows hook. This is the one a lot of us have switched to. And what I mean by that is you'll notice that that hook point is elevated beyond the eye. So when the fish get this and you swing, there's going to be a lot of hook penetration still going into the fish, but it's not going to go all the way outside of their skull, right? The other one that's great is the Owner Jungle Wide Gap. This is one that we've been fishing a long time. And again, kind of the same idea. It's got this elevated point above the eye, so above where you're tying on, so that when you swing, there's plenty of hook point that can penetrate into the fish. All right, next mistake we see people make is in line selection. Now, a lot of times people have this instinctive, I don't know what goes through our mind, but you think heavy cover, big baits, big fish, like, oh, I'm gonna go to Braid, right? Because this shit is invincible, right? I can haul those fuckers out, right? And Braid, a lot of times, is absolutely the right choice to make when you're flipping and pitching, especially if you guys are flipping around a lot of grass, into toolies, into places where what Braid will do is, because of the no stretch, it will actually cut through a lot of that aquatic vegetation and help you pull those fish out. But again, if you guys are flipping a lot of wood, Braid can oftentimes be the wrong choice to make because Braid has that cutting ability, right? That same, plus if you're fishing aquatic vegetation where it just slices through that stuff, it is also going to slice into the wood. So if you think of, a big piece of wood and you take a saw and you it kind of gets stuck in there, right? I mean, it'll cut in and then it's like stuck and you got to kind of pull it out. The same thing happens with Braid. So if you are flipping into a tree that's got branches and the line is wrapped around a branch and it gets down to the bottom and then boom, the fish bites and you swing, that line laying on the branch will oftentimes cut into the branch and then it sticks. Okay, so you go to swing and you're stuck, and what's actually happening is the line is cut into the wood and you can't move it now. So anytime I'm flipping wood, I switch to fluorocarbon. A lot of times I'll switch to fluorocarbon for grass as well, just depending on how picky the fish get. So when I switch to fluorocarbon, I'm almost always switching to Sunline shooter. I use 22 pound probably 95% of the time. I'll jump to 25 pound if it's just super gnarly and I need something really, really stout. But 22 pound is easy casting, it's very strong, it has some stretch into it, so if I'm close range, I'm not gonna break any fish off on the hook set. So you gotta pay attention to what it is that you're flipping. If you're flipping, grass and green stuff, you should be fine with Braid. If you're flipping brown wood and that kind of stuff and you don't want the line to dig, definitely take a look at fluorocarbon. All right, next thing we see go wrong with a lot of guys is rod selection. Now, There are tons of rods on the market that are labeled as flippin' rods or punchin' rods or whatever the case may be, right? Flippin' rods are generally in a 8-foot-ish length, 7'10", 7'11", 8 foot, somewhere in there. Because when we think of flippin', we're thinking of, true kind of, pull the line out and kind of flip it into pockets, right? And if that's what you guys are doing, if it's open water, say you live in Florida or somewhere where you're on a boat, you're in open space, and you're literally flipping, right? Then that 8-foot rod is really nice because it will give you tons of leverage, tons of ability to cast and put that bait exactly where you want it to go. But a lot of guys say, okay, I'm going to go flipping, but they really mean more pitching, right? And the difference is flipping is where you're going to kind of pull the line back and let the rod kind of guide the bait. Pitching is where you're going to kind of hold the bait in a hand and you're going to kind of cast it out, right? So pitching is what the majority of guys end up doing when they say they're going flipping. That wasn't confusing, was it, Jeff?
No, that was perfect.
Okay, good. So, the other thing too is out here, again, in Arizona, a lot of times we're crashing through like big wood, and they're big trees. And so they may be, 4 or 5 foot of water on them, but there's also like 10 or 12 foot of trees still coming up. A lot of times you're crashing through this jungle and there's all kinds of cover and brush all around you. And trying to navigate an 8-foot rod through all these like obstacles can be really difficult, okay? So if you guys are doing more pitching than flipping, or you've got a bunch of brush surrounding you, maybe you're fishing from shore and you're trying to just kind of pop out some little areas, then I would strongly suggest going to a shorter rod, something in the 7.2 to 7.5 length, because it's going to give you a lot better presentation for your close range pitches. You're going to get a lot more control. You're going to get a lot more accuracy. So you're going to be able to land your bait into the bushes and into your target spots a lot easier with a shorter length rod. I use the TS Destroyer Poker almost exclusively for my flipping. It's a 7.2, and this is like my go-to kind of pitch around rod. I'll use an 895 NRX when I need something just a little bit longer, which is 7.5, and then I save my 8-foot rods for when I'm in more aquatic vegetation and nice and open. Remember, not every rod too needs to be just a broomstick. A lot of rods come and they're going to have a nice soft tip to them, so they've got plenty of power, but that nice soft tip will aid in the castability to allow you to make that bait land nice and soft. Dude, we're not all KVD. Not like you, Jeff.
No, I'm Ish Monroe.
Boom. We're not all Ish Monroe, right? I wish I could flip like Ish Monroe, but I flip like Ben Kohler. It's fairly sloppy, right? So if I can get a rod that's got some tip that can help me get that bait in there quieter and more accurately, then I'm definitely going to do it. So when I'm looking for a flipping rod, I'm looking for something that still has a little bit of tip to it and then plenty of power in the back section. All right, and the last mistake that we're going to touch base on today, and this is probably the most important piece, is improper hook sets. Now, Jeff and I have been spending a lot of time talking about hook sets, fluorocarbon, proper ways of doing things, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen guys flip and they break the fish off on the hook set. It happens all the time. And here's basically what happens. Even if you have super strong fluoro, you got 20 pound, 22, 25, right? That line is virtually unbreakable, right? You take that line and you pull, there's no way you can break 22 or 25 pound fluorocarbon, right? Just by pulling on it. But what happens a lot of times, we're pitching to this bush, right? Nothing. All right. Pitching to this bush, nothing, right? And we may go a couple hours without getting bit. And so our focus kind of gets off, right? And so we start paying attention, staring around at other things or looking at the next bush or whatever. And all of a sudden we get bit and we kind of panic and we kind of do this like snap set, right? Well, anytime you snap fluorocarbon. So it goes from being slack to boom, like that. You're putting so much pressure on it that all that energy has to go somewhere, right? And usually what happens is it smacks and poof, it pops and it's gone, okay? So it's really important on the hook set with flipping that it's a smooth, controlled deal, right? So boom, I got bit. All you need to do is just basically pull up with some power, okay? Now this is assuming that you have the right rod and the right line, right? All you have to do is get the bait in there. Oh, there's one, right? It should just look like this. Nice, smooth, controlled, okay? Put it in the bush, boom, got one. Steady pull, okay? It's basically just a pull back on the fish. It's not a, wind down, this real fast snap. You don't need that. Just winding down and you're giving the fish a steady pull so that that line is maintaining a straight, steady pull, and it's gonna set the hook and pull the fish out of cover. Reduce that slack line set as much as you can. It will prevent tons of breakage from happening on you guys. All right, that's a wrap. Hopefully that sheds some lights on maybe some things that you guys have experienced in the past that maybe went wrong. Of course, I would love to keep an open conversation about this because I want us all to elevate our flipping skills. I want us all to catch a bunch of fish this spring and have as few of frustrations as we can. So if you guys have questions on anything that we covered, drop me a question down below in the comments and we will get to it. Jeff will leave links to some of the products we talked about today if you want to check any of them out closer. And of course, we can have an open conversation about that as well. And again, like I mentioned earlier, if there are other mistakes that you guys know, that you've experienced, that you've seen guys make, we'd love to hear about that too, because we all want to grow. So on behalf of myself, my family, and everybody here, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate the business. Thank you for the support. Until next time. Peace.